Okay. All right, so good evening, everyone. My name is Sean Dugan. I'm the Public Information Officer for the town, and I will be facilitating tonight's public information session. I am joined by our town manager, Jim Malloy, Michael McLean, our police chief, and Michael Cronin, who is the Director of Public Facilities for the town. We're here tonight to share some information on the police station project ahead of the single ballot question voters will weigh in on next Monday, June 6th in the special town election. We'll discuss the need for the project and the financial impact to property owners and the community at large, and then we'll leave some time at the end for questions and answers at the end. In the meantime, throughout the presentation from our panel, you can enter in your questions at the Q&A function on the bottom of your screen. And with that, I will turn it over to our town manager, Jim Malloy.
Thank you, Sean. So what we thought we'd do is we did a presentation last week to a group of affinity associations in the community, and we'll do something very similar this evening where I will talk briefly about the cost associated with the project and where you can find more information related to the project. And then Mike Cronin will talk a little bit about how we got to the point we are right now, starting back in 2011. And then Mike McLean will speak on the type of activities that will go on in the department and the types of things that we've made accommodations for in the building. And so I'm going to share my screen, make sure that people can try to share my screen. There we go. So from the town's homepage, we have put this link right here to the police station building project. And when you click on it, comes up onto this page, talks about this meeting this evening via Zoom, and then Friday of this week, we're doing a League of Women Voters presentation. Talks about the project, about the debt exclusion, provides links to the actual article, a link to the sample ballot, and more information about the special election. Then it talks about the history of the project. As I said, it started back in 2011 and goes through everything that we've been doing over the past couple of years. We have done a calculation on what the cost is to the average taxpayer. The average cost will start off at $258 and then reduce down to $149 per year added on to the tax bill. The average is $204 per year. And the reason why it changes is because municipalities, when we issue debt, it's generally issued so that there is a set principal payment and a declining interest payment at each year. And so we've also added a tax rate calculator so that every single homeowner can take a look at what their home is valued at. And so if your house was valued at $1 million, I think that's 10 million. Nope, it's 1 million. Yeah, it's $1 million. Nope, that's wrong. Too many zeros. There we go. Then the estimated impact would be $190 per year or $16 per month. And so you can go through that tax rate calculator to see what the impact would be on your individual home. And we have also included a memorandum that I sent to the board, this one here, which is dated March 18th. And it was as we were preparing for town meeting, one of the questions we were receiving was, would the police station project put the town in a position to not be able to do the high school project? And that's a concern we've heard over and over again. And so about a year ago, a little over a year ago, about a year and a half ago, the financial management team here at the town, our internal staff, proposed a policy change in which economic development was going to be tied directly to offsetting the cost of the high school. And the proposal is that the net new property taxes from Any project that is either part of the PSDUP zoning or the rezoning of the Hartwell Avenue area, that the net new tax revenues would be set aside into a capital stabilization fund. Then we, as part of this memo, we did an analysis of those projects that have already been approved and are just either in construction right now or close to getting into construction right now. And of those projects, the memo itself includes 475 Bedford Street, which was not approved for rezoning at the town meeting, but all of these other projects have. And so what that will do is it will allow us to set aside right now about $11.5 million a year as the estimate, using current assessed valuations for similar type properties, of what's estimated to be about a $15 million annual debt payment. And that's for a $350 million high school, in which the state is reimbursing the town approximately 25%. And when you do the debt calculations, it comes up to about $15 million a year. This would offset about $11.5 million. The debt service for the high school will probably hit in fiscal year 28 or 29. And between now and then, we anticipate that there will be more economic development, especially in the Hartwell area, and that will either offset most, if not all, of the high school debt costs. And so we wanted to make sure that information was out there and very clear. This memo here, dated May 9th, is related to all of the outstanding debt exclusion and overrides that the town has approved in the past. The town has not approved an override election since 2007. We have not brought one forward, and we do not anticipate bringing one forward in the near future. So then we also have a FAQ page on the project, which will talk in more detail about questions that we've received. There is the Capital Expenditures Committee report and the Appropriations Committee report to town meeting this year, both of which include their positions on the police station project and the need for the project. And then in addition to that, we have all of these links, which are architectural presentations that were done to the select board and other boards and committees. And with that, I will we'll be taking questions after all three of us have had an opportunity to speak. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Cronin to talk on the project itself and the history of the project.
Thanks, Jim. So just wanted to go back in time a little bit and kind of recap where this project came from. In 2011, this project was brought forward for a space analysis study, which was performed by a company called Dunham & Sweeney. And what they did was they kind of looked at the building itself and how Lexington does policing in the modern day era. If you remember, this building was built 75 years ago, and things just have changed dramatically over time. So in that study, they determined that the existing building is about 12,500 square feet. And a new facility would be required to be 28,308 square feet. So 2.5 times the size of the existing building for, in 2011, what they determined were current policing practice. So in 2017, the town went forward and authorized a feasibility study. And in 2019, they also authorized $1.8 million for the design and engineering of the new police facility. Part of the process is the design team met with dozens of committees and different departments to figure out what this police station should look like, how it should be, how it should really embrace the public. And through those meetings, there were a couple of different themes that came out, one of which was inclusivity, 100% inclusivity. The current building doesn't really have that, and I'll get into that in a minute. Gender neutrality is also an area where people really had some significant focus. We talk a little bit about the existing building. For those folks that haven't been inside the building or behind that little vault door, the entry, you won't find an elevator in the building. It's kind of amazing that these days and age, there's no elevator. It doesn't have sprinklers. In the event of a fire, we don't have the ability to put that out. There's no AC. They have it in the dispatch area, but there's an exception. It doesn't have any kind of a welcoming lobby. As you know, when you walk in that main front entrance, you're in this little fortified little space that's in there, and that's it. The men's and women's bathrooms are just that. They are separate gendered bathrooms. There's men's bathrooms and ladies' bathrooms, and that's it. The new facility heard a whole bunch of feedback from the different committees, and it is 100% accessible. The entrance is off Mass Ave. So there's that public facing, public welcoming, warm entrance. When you go in the front doors, you're in this really nice, attractive, Jim, right at the bottom of the page on the left. Yeah, this nice, beautiful lobby that's in there. And you'll notice there are two restrooms right as you walk in. So folks that are using, say, Fletcher Field, or they're at the farmer's market, or they're ice skating, folks can come into the building and use the restrooms that are right there. And be very clear, they're gender neutral bathrooms. So they're just open restrooms for everybody to use. You walk a little further into the lobby, on the right-hand side, there's this little conference space that can be used for a bunch of different things. Having private conversations with police officers, doing things in a safe manner, like transactions from Facebook Marketplace. If you were selling a watch to somebody and they wanted to pick one up in a nice, safe space, that would be a great space for that. And as you walk a little further to the left of that front lobby, there are a couple of counters where folks can come in and do whatever business they need to do with the police. Chief McLean can get into that in a little bit. And lastly, on the far left, there is this training facility. That's this public space that's available for committee meetings, for policing activities, and for public use for some kind of outside meeting. There are also two additional bathrooms that are available in that space that are also restrooms. That's really the space that the public would come in to use, significantly different than what we have today in the old, not very warm and welcoming building. In 2020, the building was put on pause. And the reason for that was because we all remember some of the horrific events that took place across the country. And we decided to take a look at policing in Lexington. And they had about a year's worth of conversations around that. And in the end, the report came forward and said, this building needs to have an additional 4,000 square feet for mainly mental health resources. And so the designers went back to the drawing boards. They went back and redesigned the space, and we added a host of new little suites that are available for offices for these kind of purposes. I'll let Mike talk more about what the exact nature is, but there were things like mental health, social worker, and other social service providers that we now use as part of the tools for policing. And lastly, in 2021, the design was put forward to the select board. They completed that work, and we brought that to town meeting in 2022, where the town meeting folks appropriated $32.5 million for the construction of this building. Mike, maybe you want to take it away and talk a little bit about the policing component?
Sure, thanks, Mike. Although you stole a lot of my thunder by talking about a lot of my rooms, but that's okay. Jim, would you mind putting that back up that had both the floors on either side, the left and right? Thank you. Just to get into a little bit more about Mike, I think one of the things we're most proud of for this project is the fact that it's really is truly a collaborative effort. In discussions, Mike said that we've had numerous conversations between facilities and the police department and the architecture firm, but also the fact that we did speak with so many of the cultural and affinity groups outside in the community to get their input on what they felt they wanted to see in their police department. We also talked with other town departments who we partner with all the time, what they want from their police department as services and partnerships, as well as the officers who spend the vast majority of their weeks in this building, what they thought we needed to improve upon the services. So first and foremost, I think Mike touched on the majority of it, is people wanted to feel welcome and inviting when they came into the police department. And like many of the things that Mike said, that the lobby offers us a really good upgrade with spaces that the public can use and come in, whether it's just to, you know, get out of the weather, charge a phone, hold a community meeting that we could be a part of in the training room is great. But one of the things we're most proud of is on the second floor, on the left side, is some office space that we're going to dedicate completely to civilian mental health clinicians. We're going to find out what we think works best for both the police department and the other one, Jim, to the right, second floor. Sorry, yeah, right there. Those 4 offices. So what I can envision right now, we have partnerships with mental health clinicians from a couple of advocate groups, as well as domestic violence advocates. So to be able to have them embedded in the police department in true partnerships with the police officers who work and the detectives who work in the station really is going to be a benefit to help better serve the community. We're also excited about our expanded locker rooms. We have both male, female, and gender neutral ones as well that are connected to a state-of-the-art fitness center, which right now we don't have any. So, you know, one of the big pillars of 21st century policing is officer wellness. So again, officers who are healthier, perform their tasks better, they're happier, they miss less work due to sick, illness, and less strain on town finances and medical accounts. So we're really happy with that, as well as our detective bureau will now have, currently we have 3 detectives in one office and 5 in another. This is going to be able to give everybody individual spaces to have confidential and sensitive phone conversations with maybe witnesses or victims of crime, where you're not going to have 5 or 6 other people hearing everything. So we're going to have the space that we need, not only now, but there's enough flexibility for us to grow into policing in the future, because quite frankly, 25 years ago, we don't, I mean, 25 years from now, we don't know what's going to be the changes and the new innovations that we might need room for. And Mike can probably get into it better than I can, but the flexibility in the walls of the locker rooms gives us the options to change them as the demographics of the department change as we move forward. So there's a lot of good things moving forward that we're really all excited about. But again, anybody has any questions on any of the program, I'll gladly answer anything that you may have.
So Mike, let me jump in a little bit, and you prompted that thought. So as part of the construction methods that we used for this building, with the exception of the steel frame, this building is constructed in the way that we're able to take and move walls around in the event that policing changes. If we wanted to change the locker rooms around and add less men, more integrated bathrooms that are gender neutral, we can do that easily. If we want to change the way the layouts are for the offices, we can do that easy. The walls are constructed with standard 2x4s that we can take down and reposition and rebuild so that it fits as Mike said, we don't know what 25 years is going to bring. It'll allow us to have a little bit of flexibility. This building is not like the existing building, which has big, thick masonry walls. And where a wall is, we're not going to be able to move that or take that down. So this building does allow us a lot more flexibility to kind of change the way we do things as we move forward in time. Thanks for that reminder, Mike.
Okay, so we have 3 questions that have been posted in the Q&A, and I will, I think those are all questions that I could probably respond to as well as anybody. So the first question from Adam Smith indicates that financing in our analysis is based on a 4% interest rate, and with the latest inflation numbers, is that still accurate? So that people know, we don't, what you see for home mortgages is not what the town pays when we issue debt. When we issue debt, we go out into a competitive bidding environment. And because we have a AAA bond rating, the last debt we issued was in the 2% range, and that was just last year. We do anticipate that 4% is still a conservative number for us on how we borrow money. And so we're not right now concerned that it will go up higher than that. The second question from an anonymous attendee, and I'm going to ask people after I go through these written questions if they would raise their hand, and we'll call on you once we go through these. These were just questions that were posted while the 3 of us were talking. So it says, if we are unable to fund a new high school in the future if we are able to fund a new high school in the future with new revenue, why aren't we able to fund the new police station the same way? Seems too good to be true to plan that we won't need a debt exclusion for the new high school as well. We would probably still pass a debt exclusion. It may not be for the entire amount for the high school. When it comes to the police station, this was a policy that we developed last year. And some of these properties that are already being built, the debt from, the net new property taxes from those could go to offset the debt service on the police station as well. The way the policy is written is that the financial staff will be making a recommendation to the select board and the appropriations and capital expenditures committee each year when we develop the annual budget. So depending on what's available, each year we can certainly make a recommendation because the debt on the police station will probably hit the town in fiscal year 25 for the first time. And so there will be some of this development will be completed by then. What is from John Bernhard, what is Lexington's plan if the override does not pass? The town meeting vote appropriating the money was contingent upon a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion. And I do want to make the clear distinction between override and debt exclusion. An override is a permanent override of Proposition 2.5, and a debt exclusion only excludes the portion of the debt each year. So as our debt payments go down, like I mentioned earlier, where we have a set principal payment and declining interest payments, the amount of the debt exclusion goes down each year. Okay, stop asking questions until we get the February 7th presentation of the select board has a breakdown of the cost increase from 2020 of 9.2 million. Could you explain the cost for a layperson? I will ask Mike Cronin to answer this question, but I can tell you that when we were looking at this project a couple of years ago, we were thinking that the inflation, when the select board first put it on pause, we were thinking that inflation on the construction costs would be going up by about $120,000 per month. What we found was that it went up by about $200,000 per month, excuse me, during that time because of supply chain issues and the pandemic and general inflation. The other thing that has affected the cost of the project is that it's slightly larger than it was originally proposed, and that was to accommodate some of the additional services that Chief McLean spoke about a few minutes ago. So with that, Mike, if you could talk about the construction cost a little bit more.
Sure, I'm happy to. So construction costs, as we all know, we've seen it, we've heard it over and over again, that materials are tough to find in some industries. For instance, the electrical switchgear. Usually you can get those pieces of equipment in 3 to 6 months. Right now they're saying they're out about 72 months. I'm sorry, 72 weeks. And that is, almost 2 times further. So the costs of doing those pieces of business, because they're out there and we're not getting the chips that we need, they're a little more expensive than what we're used to. In addition, labor is up. Labor is up a lot. And the length of time that this project has been kind of sitting there waiting, as we've gone through the design phase, we paused it for a little over a year. We added some additional square feet. Construction costs are up everywhere. You can see that when you go through and do some residential costing. You can see that in commercial. As I go through this email, the question, it talks about a couple different pieces, the additional fees, the building technology, and the OPM fees. There were things that we did not include in the original design that, as part of the conversations that we've had, we've now included. Building technology, for instance, there are some pieces of equipment that if we had built this building a few years earlier, we wouldn't have had to buy, but because they are 3 and 4 years older than they would have been, we are now looking at having to replace some of those pieces of equipment just due to time. We originally were going to move them to 173 Bedford Street, reuse them, and then move them back to the building, and then plan to replace them at some point in the future. But because they have hit such an age, they've actually aged out. So we've had to include some of those pieces. The additional fees of $428,000 that we talk about, as the town manager mentioned, the architects have had to stop, wait, and pick up the building again and then redesign it. They've actually had 2 redesigns this entire project. So they've had to add some additional fees in order for them to be compensated properly for all the additional work that the town has asked them to do. And the OPM fee, that owner's project manager is basically somebody who helps us oversee the project and is there 40 hours a week watching every single piece of this building being built. We've had them at Estabrook, we've had them at LCP, we've had them at Hastings. It is a piece of supervision that we incorporate as part of our scope of work. But because this building is taking longer to build, it's a little bit bigger, and because of the complexity of the construction market, we've actually had to add time to the length of this construction period, and therefore we added some OPM fee as well. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Mike. So the next question is, from Julie Barker. I welcome the collaboration with mental health services in the new building. Are you going to be offering educational programs on drugs, impact of petty crime with our young people? And I would turn that over to Chief McLean.
I think having the flexibility of the community and training room is good for 2 things. I mean, I would be open to any of those subjects whatsoever, but we wouldn't have to be limited by that anyway. We'd do it on a 2-pronged system of obviously hot button topics in the community and society. Things of today of obviously mental health and scams and identity frauds and things like that. We would definitely be having timely and different types of trainings, not only with the community, but with our officers. And having the ability to host a training has its financial perks as well, where if we have a training for 40 officers of surrounding police departments, a lot of times if you host a training, you get up to 5 free attendees. So that saves the town money on training on all important aspects. So the short answer is yes, we'd do that to many different things. Jim, do you want me to touch on a couple of these others that have to do with the size as well in there in between?
I want to kind of take them in order, but
okay, sure.
So Sean, I believe you are in charge of allowing people to speak, and Kathy Eberly has had her hand up the entire time. So if we could let her go now.
Kathy, you should have the, there you go.
Okay, yeah. My name is Kathy Eberly, and I've been a resident of Lexington for 28 years. And I'm getting very concerned about this. Just hearing what the cost of this police station has gone up just in the amount of time for different reasons that you had to hold off for a little bit because of different things. And I'm thinking, what is that school going to cost by the time we get to that? And I have no qualms that we need both things. I did the Lex Academy and went through that police station, and it's good you're building a new one. But I'm very concerned about the whole issue here of trying to do both these projects in what seems to me is a short amount of time, and what it has ramifications for with our tax base, and also given the economy the way it is right now. So those are my concerns. You don't have to respond, but as a citizen, as a taxpayer here in Lexington, and to hear some of the things that I've heard, like this school is going to be the biggest school in the whole area. And that's just like, you know, it upset me a lot. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. So just in a response to that, I mean, I hope you understand that we understand the concern and the impact, and the select board actually made it a goal of mine as the town manager to develop a policy that would help mitigate the impact of the high school debt, because as we pay off other debt and retire that debt, the total amount of debt that we have included in our budget will not go up that much by the police station project. The high school project is a whole different animal. It's 10 times the cost of the police station. And so that's why we developed this capital stabilization framework that I talked about earlier to offset the cost of the high school as much as possible. When we proposed it, we said that we were hoping that it would offset about 50% of the cost of the debt service. And just from projects that have already been approved, we believe that we are closer to about 75 or 80% of the estimated debt service costs for the high school. So we're actually doing a lot better, and we have a lot of years left before that debt hits. And so I think that by the time we get there, it'll have a minimal impact on the town's overall operations. And that's really by taking this money from the net new property taxes and setting it aside in a capital stabilization fund, it does not become part of our operating budget, our annual operating budget, which has been the past practice of the town, is that all new growth goes into the budget in the year it's recognized, and then it just becomes part of the operation budget through the revenue allocation model we do, where we split revenues between the town and the school department. And this actually will require a lot of fiscal restraint. We've already, this is the first year that it's being implemented, and we've already set aside the funds from that are estimated from those several properties that are increasing in value. So the next question was, what was your estimate for the new fire station, and what was the final cost? And I'll ask Mike Cronin to address that.
So the fire station was around 25 million, and that project stayed pretty even. Now, remember, we built that building and did all the design work prior to COVID hitting. And so there was, the economy was a little bit different then, and the timing worked out perfectly. We got fantastic rates on that building. We got a good project team that actually worked on it. That building did not go through a year-long, put it on hold, 2 redesigns, and the addition of all the extra square footage. That building was fairly straightforward. We stayed pretty tight to the original projected numbers and then the final construction dollars.
And it came in how much under what was appropriated?
About $1 million under budget.
Okay. So it came in about $1 million under the budget. Another question from the anonymous attendee, and that's that you've already admitted that nobody knows what will happen in 25 years. So why this expensive project is planned for form unknown? There's a typo there, but is there community space elsewhere in the town can be used for community meetings? So the community meeting room is actually designed to be a training room similar to what we have in the fire station. And I believe the comment on we don't know what will be in 25 years was more about the design of the building and the flexibility that has been designed into the building, so that if we have, right now we have a majority male police officers, and so the male locker room is larger than the female locker room. One thing that we may find 25 years from now is maybe it's 50-50, in which case we can move a wall and accommodate those additional female officers. In the past, what's happened is, as police department, and I know this just from other police departments in towns that I've worked in, as police departments have had the gender change in the number of police officers they have, female police officers have been pigeonholed into inappropriate locker rooms, closets and bathrooms and things like that are not necessarily designed as locker rooms. And so this building, the intent of what the comment was there was that this building actually designs flexibility into the overall design so that we can make those kind of accommodations in the future. If we needed more social workers in the future, we could move some walls and accommodate that. And that's what the comment was meant to reflect, is that we don't know 25 years from now whether we'll have different services we're providing out of the building, but that the building as it's designed will provide the flexibility to allow us to provide those services. The next question is from Yifem Soman. Whoops, it's moving because more people are, excuse me. From 1970 to today, the population of Lexington increased by 4.5%. Why does the station need to be 2.5 times bigger? Invitingness is good, but everything has its costs. The police department, in the time that the current station was built, which I believe was 1956, is that correct? Was actually about half the size that it is right now. And we're not only building for today's police department, but also for what may be in place 50 to 75 years from now, because that's the expected lifespan of the building. I don't know if either Mike McLean or Mike Cronin wanted to add to that.
Yeah, if I will, Jim, if you don't mind, although I did kind of spend a lot of time on the invitingness and some of the new stuff, I do have to say I've been with this police department since 1995. And when I arrived in 1995, the building was way too small for what we needed then, and it's still way too small for what we need now. So not just as what some of the new things we have moving forward, but just to do what we're continuing to do today, we need more space. We don't have the storage space we need for records and equipment. We currently don't have the office space to put all our civilian staff and our detective bureaus and other specialty positions, and little things like Jim had mentioned, the locker rooms, our meeting spaces in the station are really inadequate. I mean, we're using rooms for break rooms and then senior staff meetings and trainers whenever possible. So really we are using what we have to the best of our ability. We've always prided ourselves on doing more with less, but it's gotten to a point for us to be successful and efficiently serve the community. We just need more space. So regardless of what's going to happen in 25 years, for us to do what we need to do now and in the very near future, we just don't have the room at this point.
And we can certainly do a follow-up on the census figure, but between the 2010 and the 2020 census, the population of Lexington, I believe, went from about a little over 32,000 to about 34,500, which is more than 4.5%. So I'm assuming since 1970, it went up by more than 4.5%. The next question is from Mike Ritchie. I'm not sure you answered what would happen if the debt exclusion does not pass. Could you answer that? If the debt exclusion does not pass, the town meeting vote is still in place, but there is a set timeline between when the town meeting appropriation is approved and we have to have the debt exclusion approved. So we would have an opportunity to come back and try to do some additional education if we needed to. And then if that didn't work, then what would happen is we would not be able to go forward with the project, is quite frankly where we would be. And then we would be back doing either more redesign or doing something else and bringing that back before town meeting, and then potentially back for another debt exclusion vote in another year or two. As a follow-up to a recent question, what is the plan for actual station if not passed? Okay. At what point is it not sustainable to keep trying to maintain it versus just building new? And I would turn that over to Mike Cronin about the value of just not maintaining it. And the other point is that the building, as Mr. Cronin said, is just over 13,000 square feet. And the space needs analysis indicated we needed about 30,000 square feet. And so it's not just a matter of maintaining the existing building, but also the fact that the building is severely undersized. So Mike.
So Jim, you took the words right out of my mouth. It's really about what the facility offers and what it doesn't offer and the needs of the department. And the needs are so significant that just in regular maintenance, we can't keep the building running at the way it needs to run. Secondly, there's millions of dollars that are needed immediately for that building for maintenance that has come due. And we have been putting off the maintenance to do to that building, a new roof, some exterior brick pointing, new windows. The windows are awful. That building needs to have some significant investment in infrastructure for that building alone. And in the north of $2.5 million right now. So if we don't build the building and the town chooses not to go forward with it, we really need to put some significant money into that building just to get it back up to a livable standard. If you go through the last report that we had from an evaluation, that building was given a D. That building needs to be invested in immediately.
Mike, in that report, which is what Mr. Cronin is referring to, is a 20-year capital planning report that we had completed for both the municipal buildings and all of our school buildings so that we would know when we need to do major projects. And it did contain a cost to maintain that facility. Offhand, Mike, do you know the number of that value?
The deferred dollars, Jim, to this point today is $2.5 million. So in the next 5 years, there's some additional numbers. I don't have that off the top of my head. I'm sorry. But the millions of dollars that are needed into that building to get it to where we push stuff off, knowing that we were going to do something with this building or anticipating that. And so we've kind of held, it makes sense for me to replace a roof if we thought we might build a new one in a couple of years. So we've got $2.5 million in projects that are past due. And we've got another couple of $1 million that are due immediately in order for us to move forward. So the building has some significant infrastructure investment that are necessary, forgetting the fact that it doesn't even offer the minimum requirements that are the policing department requires just to operate.
Yeah. So the next question is, considering the challenges with climate change and our carbon footprint, will the police force be considering reducing their use of patrol cars in the presence of police officers on foot? It has the advantage of better connection with our community and requires less physical spaces for cars. I will let Chief McLean answer that, but I also want to indicate that the building is being designed so that it can accommodate a level 3 EV charging system so that we could move to electric vehicles in the police department. And with that, I will just let Chief McLean respond to the remainder of that question.
I agree with Mr. Malloy. I mean, obviously, we're looking at the sustainability of our fleet right now. We're already moving to, we have a couple of hybrid cars and one electric vehicle on order right now. We hope to get those within the next few months, but I don't honestly ever see a point where Lexington could ever be a fully walking beach. Just the 15.5 mile square mile of the town would be really a lot of a drain and would probably need to almost double the size of our force to have that many people out there. So we're always looking for ways to incorporate things like bike patrol, walking beats in the center. So I see more of those in the future, but for the most part, I see the majority of our patrol officers on the street being reliant on some form of vehicles. And like Mr. Malloy said, I believe we're going to have up to, I don't know, Mike, if it was 6 or 9 charging stations in there, so we can be charging vehicles at all times, so we can run all of our shifts on electric vehicles. Right now, we're just not there yet as far as knowing what electric vehicles can do with the high energy needs that police cars have with the bar lights, the computer systems within it and other things. But as those the electric vehicles become more capable, we'll be looking at them more. But I see by the time probably that we get back into the new station, we'll be ready for some form of our fleet to be electric at that point.
Thank you.
So Jim, the other point is that because of that infrastructure, we're talking about being carbon, reducing our carbon footprint, the direction that we're having to develop a set of photovoltaics that would take the entire building and make it 100% carbon neutral. So what we're trying to do is make a net zero police station. The first phase is the building, and then the second phase will be, here is an infrastructure that will be evaluated and designed in order to provide a net zero, carbon zero building.
So that really goes to the next 2 questions, which deals with why is the building equipped for future solar power rather than including solar panels from the beginning? Wouldn't it save money and installation ongoing energy costs? And why does the roof design only accommodate solar on 25% of its surface? I'm perplexed that the roof covers only 20% of the electrical need for net zero, and additional real estate will be needed for panels. And so, Mr. Cronin, if you want to address those questions.
Happy to. So we are putting solar up on the roof, and we've maximized the direction from the architect from the very beginning was to maximize the roof space in order to accommodate solar voltaic panels. And the architect did that. And through all of the different directions given with the input from the HTC and the needs of the police department, and making that building kind of fit in that area of downtown, the historic district. We couldn't build a police station that just had one big flat roof made super efficient for photovoltaics. It needed to kind of fit in with the character of that neighborhood. So it had to have some certain peaks and valleys and some angular roof structure. So it didn't allow us to have full coverage of the solar. But we always knew that we wanted to put solar as part of this. And the plan had been originally to separate the two projects into two pieces. The building itself with all of the infrastructure ready. And if that project passed, we would wind up going forward for fall town meeting with a separate design for the photovoltaics that would have that building become a net zero building. So what our plan is that the contractor, once on board, if the new solar voltaic package is approved by the town meeting, we will put that under the construction requirements of the contractor that's on site building the building. And we will open the building with the solar and the building at the same time. So there won't be an operational requirement at that point moving forward.
Okay, so the last question that is in the panel and the Q&A written questions is that from Lance. He says, I agree we need a new building, but I question the size. How many police officers did we have 20 years ago? And how many today? How bad is the crime in Lexington today versus 20 years ago? I never hear or see anything about crime in Lexington. Any statistics? Murder, assault, home invasion, armed robbery, and auto theft. Chief McLean, I'll let you respond to that.
I can touch on when I first came here again in 95, so roughly 27 years ago. We had 54 officers. In the early 2000s, we had a layoff of 9 officers, and we've been trying to get back to that number. Currently, we have 50 sworn officers. As far as crime goes, I can say we're pretty steady from where I was when we began to now. And although we don't have a lot of high profile violent crime, I mean, for the most part, we have the same crime that everybody else does in the area as far as property crime, fraud, larcenies, thefts, simple assaults, things of that nature. I don't have exact stats with me right now, but we do an average of 13 to 14,000 calls for service, and we investigate roughly about 650 crimes and roughly about 500 that go to court every single year, just to give you a rough idea of where we are. So it's not that we've seen everything go drastically up or drastically down, but it's pretty common for a community our size in a metropolitan area like we are.
And those statistics are available in all of the town reports of the actual activities of the police department. Those town reports can be found online. If you just Google Lexington Annual Town Reports, they go back many years, as many as you want, really. Goes back to 1829. And so you can find information on crime statistics and activities of the police department on the town's website. So with that, are there any other questions? Somebody can raise their hand if they have any questions. I don't see any. So we certainly we've had, at one point we had 38 people. We now have 34 people. Certainly appreciate you taking an hour out of your time to pose your questions to us and listen. We certainly do appreciate the attentiveness and the engagement with the community. Again, we're doing a session with the League of Women Voters on Friday, and the debt exclusion election is next Monday on January 6th. January 6th. I keep saying that, June 6th. For some reason, January 6th keeps sticking in my head. So June 6th.
And a recording of this webinar will be available on the police station webpage that the town manager had displayed at the beginning, and it's easily accessible right on the homepage of LexingtonMA.gov. You'll see an icon with a police station building on it, and we'll have that there tomorrow.
All right, so thank you, everybody.